We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says China and ASEAN will hold the first military exercises in South China Sea in October after his meeting with ASEAN foreign ministers in Singapore.
Thank you.
The White House seeks to walk back a tweet from President Donald Trump calling for an end to the Russia election meddling probe, saying he was expressing an opinion and not giving an order to the Justice Department.
Singapore's Prime Minister says he hopes to complete by the end of the year a massive China-backed regional trade pact that has taken center stage as Washington embarks on a unilateral protectionist agenda.
And a major U.S. report says planet warming greenhouse gases surged to new highs as abnormally hot temperatures swept the globe and ice melted at record levels in the Antarctic last year due to climate change.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. China wants military exercises and energy exploration with Southeast Asian nations in the disputed waters, according to a draft document, but insists on outside countries being excluded in what analysts said was a bid to diminish U.S. influence. Take a listen.
第二是安全合作迈上了新台阶，双方同意今年10月将举行中国东盟海上联合演习。我们将以这次的演习作为一个起点，来拓展中国和东盟的军事交流和安全合作，共同应对安全挑战，共同维护地区的稳定。
In the draft text, Beijing suggested that China and the 10 ASEAN states should carry out joint military exercises regularly. However, the drill should not involve countries outside the region unless the parties concerned are notified beforehand and express no objection. The suggestion to exclude outside countries, quote, is obviously targeted at the U.S., which has been dominating the waters of the Western Pacific and the South China Sea in particular, according to Wang Tiya from the ASEAN Study Center. IC's Yusof Ishak Institute in Singapore told AFP. By proposing joint military exercises, China is trying to send a subtle message to the world that ASEAN and China could work together and things are progressing well. Hence, there's no need for external involvement in the South China Sea, added Ha. Beijing also suggested that China and ASEAN could carry out joint oil and gas exploration in the waters, but again proposed that firms from countries outside the region be excluded from such activities, according to the document. At a meeting of foreign ministers in Singapore on Thursday, Beijing and ASEAN announced they had agreed on the negotiating text for the code. In the text, Vietnam offers the strongest opposition to Beijing's activities, calling for countries to stop building artificial islands and establishing military installations. But there was little sign of serious resistance from other countries, signaling how opposition to China's aggressive expansion in the resource-rich waters has ebbed in recent years in Southeast Asia.
On the South China Sea front, ASEAN member states and China have been working towards the full and effective implementation of the Declaration of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea and the early conclusion of an effective Code of Conduct.
To other news now, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence receives the remains of more than 50 presumed American servicemen killed in the Korean War during a ceremony at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam in Hawaii.
And we are gathered here at this honorable carry ceremony to receive 55 flag-draped cases, which we trust include the remains of American heroes who fell in the Korean War. Some have called the Korean War the forgotten war. But today, we prove these heroes were never forgotten. Today, our boys are coming home. My dad, Lieutenant Ed Pence, fought in combat in the Korean War. He came back with a medal on his chest. But my dad, gone now 30 years, always told us that the real heroes of the Korean War were the ones that didn't get to come home.
President Trump, days earlier, praised North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for keeping his word and handing over the remains.
Meanwhile, the White House sought to walk back a tweet from President Trump calling for an end to the Russia election meddling probe, saying he was expressing an opinion and not giving an order to the Justice Department. Take a look. Now, President Trump on Wednesday told his Attorney General to end the high-profile investigation into Russian election meddling that has ensnared key members of his presidential campaign and cast a long shadow over his White House. In a series of tweets that quickly sparked accusations that the president was publicly trying to pervert justice, the president decried the investigation led by Special Counsel Robert Mueller as a disgrace. This is a terrible situation, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now before it continues to stain our country any further, Trump said. Now, aides rushed to limit the damage, insisting he was not issuing an order as Sessions' boss.
It's not an order, it's the president's opinion, and it's ridiculous that all of the corruption and dishonesty that's gone on with the launching of the witch hunt, the president has watched this process play out, but he also wants to see it come to an end, as he stated many times, and we look forward to that happening.
An Aeromexico flight crashed on takeoff during a heavy hailstorm in northern Mexico, engulfing the plane in flames and injuring 97 people.
So when it hit the ground, it started fire, the engine exploded, and it went off the rail. In moments. And then people were screaming, and I was praying. I was praying to the nombre de Jesús, at the nombre de Jesús. So Jesus saved our lives.
Estaba bien hasta que el avión cayó y todos queríamos salir. Estábamos desesperados porque nos estábamos ahogando por el humo.
In other news, China's top religious authority launched an investigation after two former monks alleged that a prominent Buddhist abbot and Communist Party member coerced several nuns into having sex with him, one of the country's most high-profile #MeToo moments. The allegations against Abbot Xue Cheng and the Beijing Longquan Monastery burst into the public eye when a 95-page document written by the former monks, who also claimed that the temple is in financial trouble, emerged online earlier this week. He's accused of sending illicit text messages to at least 6 women, tempting or threatening them to have sex with him. 4 gave in to Xue Cheng's demands, the report said, adding that he tried to assert mind control by claiming that this was a part of their Buddhist studies. The monastery had on Wednesday denounced the dossier, which it says falsified evidence, calling it an attempt to tarnish Xue Cheng and the monastery's reputation. Xue Cheng is a prominent personality in Chinese Buddhist life, with a social media following of millions. He heads the Buddhist Association of China and is also a member of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, a top advisory board. Marie Laguerre,
the young woman who posted a shocking video allegedly showing a man punching her in broad daylight outside a cafe after she responded to his sexual harassment, speaks about the attack and the support she's received since.
Sur moi, ouais, bien sûr. Pas trop s'attarder non plus sur ce que je ressens et la fatigue, hein, c'est pas très... Ça n'a pas encore commencé là. Donc j'ai croisé un homme qui, à mon passage, il s'est permis de faire des bruits à connotation sexuelle, des espèces de sifflements humiliants et dégradants, des coups de langue. C'était pas le premier de la journée ni de la semaine, c'est quelque chose qui arrive au quotidien et ça s'accumule, et quand ça s'accumule, ça met la rage, parce que je veux plus tolérer ça, donc j'ai lâché un ta gueule. Je pensais pas qu'il entendrait. Je pense que j'ai une énorme chance puisque toutes les femmes vivent des situations similaires, mais moi j'ai eu la chance d'avoir une vidéo. Et ça permet de faire réagir, ça va peut-être faire changer les choses, j'espère. Et pour ça, s'il n'y avait pas eu les témoins, le patron du bar, ça ne serait jamais arrivé.
Au-dessus d'Oran.
Staying in Paris, the Eiffel Tower turned away tourists for a second day in Paris as workers press a strike over a new access policy, which they say is causing unacceptably long wait times for visitors. The monument has been closed since Wednesday afternoon as unions locked horns with management over a decision to assign separate elevators to visitors with pre-booked tickets and those who buy them on site. At the same time, the tower now sets aside half of daily tickets for internet customers, up from just 20% previously. Workers say the changes have resulted in lopsided queues that can extend to 3 hours for those waiting to pay for tickets, and up to an hour for internet customers who are supposed to have reserved time slots. They want more flexibility in managing the thousands hoping to reach the top of the Iron Lady each day during the peak summer tourist season. The tower's 300-strong staff has staged strikes repeatedly in recent years over issues including pickpocketing and maintenance work. It's one of the most popular tourist attractions in the world, drawing more than 6 million people each year.
Turkey and the United States are locked in the most serious diplomatic crisis between the NATO allies in years after Washington slapped sanctions on two senior Turkish ministers, Abdülhamit Gül and Süleyman Soylu, and Ankara vowed to retaliate. Tensions have ratcheted up in recent weeks over Turkey's detention on terror charges of American pastor Andrew Brunson, who was first detained in October 2016 and was moved to house arrest last week. The move to house arrest of Brunson, who led a Protestant church in the Aegean city of Izmir, inflamed rather than diffused tensions, with President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence warning Turkey it faced sanctions. The sanctions targeting Justice Minister Abdülhamit Gül and Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu freeze any property or assets on U.S. soil held by the two ministers, bar U.S. citizens from doing business with them. These officials serve as leaders of Turkish government organizations responsible for implementing Turkey's serious human rights abuses, the U.S. Treasury Department said in a statement. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is to chair a meeting of Turkey's top military council, has yet to comment on the sanctions. But on Wednesday, he vowed Turkey would not give in to threats from the United States, accusing Washington of showing an evangelist Zionist mentality.
The Zimbabwe Election Commission appealed for patience over the presidential vote count after opposition protests over alleged fraud turned violent when soldiers opened fire, killing 3.
We do acknowledge, like the deputy chair said, that the longer it takes, the more the anxiety that is there amongst our citizens. But the reality of the situation is that we need to do the whole process within the confines of the law. Let me not give a specific time whether I will do it today or tomorrow. But there is significant progress that is happening now in terms of the collection.
The vote, the first since autocrat Robert Mugabe was ousted last year, turned bloody on Wednesday when troops opened fire on demonstrators against alleged electoral fraud, leaving 3 people dead and prompting an international outcry. The government accused the Movement for Democratic Change, MDC opposition party, of inciting the unrest and vowed to enforce a security clampdown. But President Emerson Mnangagwa said he wanted an independent investigation into the killings and that he sought to settle differences peacefully. In official results from the parliamentary election, also held on Monday, ZANU-PF won easily, suggesting Mnangagwa would be on course to retain the presidency. But the MDC has said it won the elections outright and accused the government and ZEC of rigging the government, or rigging the count rather. The elections had been meant to turn the page on years of violence-marred elections and brutal repression of dissent after Mugabe's 37-year rule was ended by a brief military takeover in November.
Ongoing violence and attacks on civilians' infrastructure in Hudaida directly threaten hundreds of thousands of children and their families in Yemen, according to the heads of the United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, in a statement released. Attacks against civilian facilities and services are unacceptable, inhumane, and breach of the basic laws of war, said UNICEF Executive Director Henrietta Fore. She said there had been an escalation in the targeting of facilities which are essential to sustaining the lives of children and families. It was reported at the weekend that a UNICEF-supported warehouse containing humanitarian provisions, including hygiene and water-related supplies, was hit by 2 airstrikes. On Saturday, a UNICEF-supported sanitation center in the Zabid district came under attack, damaging the facility's fuel tank. A day earlier, the Almina district water station was hit, which is the main source of water for the key port city.
In other news now, a jihadist group has released videos of a Japanese journalist and an Italian man held captive in Syria, in which they appeal for their release, according to U.S.-based monitors. The 2 men, Japanese freelance journalist Junpei Yasuda and Italian national Alessandro Sandrini, appeared in 2 separate videos that are nonetheless similar in their staging and were released by the site group, which tracks white supremacist and jihadist organizations. Site didn't say which group was responsible for the videos. Both men are shown kneeling in front of a wall, wearing orange jumpsuits, while armed men dressed head to toe in black stand behind them. Junpei is thought to have been abducted by the Al-Nusra Front, a former Al-Qaeda affiliate in northern Syria, in 2015. He identifies himself as Korean in the video but speaks Japanese, giving the recording date as July 25, stating that he is in a bad situation and asking for help. Sandrini gives a different date, July 19, and says that it is his last request to the Italian government. The Italian hostage was kidnapped in Turkey in October 2016 before being taken to Syria, according to reports in the Italian media. He's believed to be from Brescia and is said to be around 32 years old.
Kuwait commemorates Iglesia Ni Cristo's 104th anniversary with a musical presentation. Beth Marasigan reports from Kuwait.
We are at the American International School Auditorium in Maidan Hawali, Kuwait, as brethren from the Iglesia Ni Cristo performs One Flock, One Shepherd, God's Promises Fulfilled musical presentation. This presentation is in line with the 104th anniversary of the establishment of the Iglesia ni Cristo in the Philippines and 50th anniversary in the West.
The day of July 27, 2018 is one of the most anticipated day by the Brethren of the Iglesia ni Cristo as the Church commemorates its 104th anniversary and its 50th anniversary in the West. In line with these events is a musical performance, One Flock and One Shepherd, God's Promises Fulfilled, relaying how the Church of Christ expanded from the Philippines and how it rapidly spread around the world. From the early morning of that day until the moment of the presentation was a non-stop preparation for the production crew, starting from the stage decoration, testing of technical equipments, until the final briefing for the cast and performers. Once the doors were opened, an estimated of 600 members of the Iglesia ni Cristo from different locales in Kuwait lined up, excited to witness the most awaited musical presentation. And indeed, it was a spectacular show. The stage was sparkling of gold colors, signifying the golden anniversary of the Church of Christ in the West. The performers were at their best, including the children. The costumes, songs and dances were just breathtaking. The cast portrayed their role excellently, delivering the message of the show clearly to the audience, while the audience is left with misty eyes but smiles on their faces. Once the show ended, we had the chance to speak and get the comments of the people who played big roles behind the scene in helping make the event a success.
Nagkaroon kami ng mga interview muna, kumuha kami ng mga cast, then kumuha kami ng mga performers, dumaan po sila sa mga pag-iensayo upang alamin namin kung sila ay karapat-dapat at nagumanap sa kanilang mga papel bilang mga cast at mga dancers at mga choral groups natin. Higit sa lahat, ang mga kabataan ay nasanay silang umawit na napakaganda at nakakapagbigay ng inspirasyon sa mga PNK at higit sa lahat, nakapagpatibay sa pananampalataya natin bilang Iglesia ni Cristo.
I would like to express my deepest thanks to those people who have performed, have stayed late nights until the morning preparing for this occasion. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your strength in faith.
I feel relieved po and proud po of not just myself po but by everyone who became a part of this play po. Since kinabahan po ako, that's the truth po, the moment I got on stage. But once I saw everything come to fruition, all of that went away and I was just filled with joy po. And I felt so proud for everyone nga po involved.
Masaya ba kayo mga kapatid? Mabuhay ang Iglesia ni Cristo! Mabuhay! Salamat sa inyong lahat mga kapatid. Maraming salamat po.
Unity is once again displayed by the Brethren of the Church of Christ here in Kuwait. The success of the celebration proved to have inspired and strengthened the faith of those who have witnessed it. This is your Eagle News correspondent Kuwait, Beth Marasigan. I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Beth. Eagle News International will be right back.
Health is our most
China warned the United States that upping the ante in a tit-for-tat trade war will only serve to disappoint the world, as Washington threatened to raise the tariff rate on the next $200 billion of Chinese imports. Beijing said it would be forced to take countermeasures to defend Chinese interests, free trade, and the international order. Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang called Washington's actions blackmail and urged the United States to return to rationality and not act on impulse. It will only hurt themselves, he said. President Trump asked the U.S. Trade Representative to consider increasing the proposed tariffs to 25% from the planned 10%. According to USTR Robert Lighthizer. Officials, however, downplayed suggestions the move was intended to compensate for the recent decline in the value of the Chinese currency, which has threatened to take much of the sting out of Trump's tariffs by making imports cheaper. The U.S. dollar has been strengthening since April as the central bank has been raising lending rates, which draws investors looking for higher returns. Washington and Beijing are locked in battle over American accusations that China's export economy benefits from unfair policies and subsidies, as well as theft of American technological know-how. President Trump has threatened to slap tariffs on virtually all of China's exports to the U.S. Officials said they remained in regular contact with their Chinese counterparts, but could announce no new meeting.
European equities markets were in the red Thursday as trade war fears ratcheted higher after the United States said it was looking at more than doubling threatened tariffs on a range of Chinese imports. In London, investors held their breath ahead of a key Bank of England monetary policy announcement at 1100 GMT. The BOE is widely expected to raise its main borrowing rate by a quarter point to 0.75%. That would just be the second hike since the global financial crisis, taking the interest rate to its highest level in nearly a decade. More broadly, European markets followed in the footsteps of Asian trading floors, which sank after the U.S. administration confirmed it was considering hiking levies to 25% from the announced 10% on $200 billion of Chinese goods. Konstantinos Antes, head of research at ADSS, wrote, should the U.S. follow through, it would be a considerable step up in the trade dispute between the U.S. and China and would start to seriously threaten global growth.
Tourism has taken a big hit at Indonesia's resort island of Lombok following a recent deadly earthquake and a string of aftershocks. Take a look.
Ya, sama sekali tidak ada. Jadi kita karena sumber dari income kita kan dari tamu. Jadi kalau tidak ada tamu ya tidak ada pemasukan. Rinjani segera dibuka karena walaupun ada air, ada kamar, tapi kalau Rinjani tidak aman, tidak kondusif, tamu kan kebanyakan yang datang ke Senaru maupun Sembalun itu adalah trekking. Kalau yang kebanyakan adalah wisatawan asing. Ya. Kalau kita lihat di bulan sekarang ini memang di bulan Juli, Agustus itu lumayan banyak, lah bola dan sebagainya.
Homestays and holiday lodges say visitor numbers have plunged, a worrisome predicament for those who rely on income from the tourism industry. The shallow 6.4 magnitude quake, which struck early Sunday on Lombok Island, was followed by scores of aftershocks.
Starbucks coffees will be delivered to Chinese consumers with the help of e-commerce giant Alibaba. The company said Thursday as two of the world's biggest names in retail joined forces in a China coffee war that is rapidly heating up. The partnership comes with Starbucks facing an aggressive challenge from Chinese upstart Luckin Coffee, which has grown rapidly on a business model of delivering beverages ordered via mobile apps. Starbucks President and CEO Kevin Johnson said at a Shanghai news conference, and I quote, "We truly believe that this enduring partnership will elevate the coffee culture in China. Starbucks products ordered by mobile apps will be brought to customers by la.me.alibaba's food delivery unit." Johnson called the tie-up rocket fuel for the U.S. company's emerging digital strategy. But Luckin, which has spiced the brewing rivalry by accusing Seattle-based Starbucks of monopolistic practices in China, tartly dismissed the Alibaba alliance. In a statement, co-founder and senior vice president Guo Jinyi labeled Starbucks a latecomer that was imitating others and losing its own individuality. Traditionally, tea-drinking China is seeing an explosion in coffee consumption, becoming Starbucks' key market after the United States and its main source of new growth.
Singapore's Prime Minister said he hoped to complete by the end of the year a massive China-backed regional trade pact that has taken center stage as Washington embarks on a unilateral protectionist agenda. The 60-nation Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, is poised to become the largest free trade agreement in the world, covering about half of its population. It notably excludes the United States, which had been leading another regional trade pact, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP, until U.S. President Donald Trump abruptly abandoned it last year.
I'm glad that ASEAN countries are redoubling their efforts to conclude the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, by the end of the year.
Are we ready?
The planned RCEP pact would group the 10 members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations plus China, India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. In his comments, which came at the start of the meeting of ASEAN foreign ministers in Singapore, Lee also warned about escalating global trade tensions.
The RCEP comprises ASEAN and our 6 FTA partners. It will be the world's largest trading bloc, covering a third of the world's GDP. Trade tensions between the US and our other dialogue partners, including China, the EU, and Canada, have escalated. It's important that ASEAN continues to support the multilateral system and work with like-minded partners to deepen our web of cooperation.
His remarks came soon after the U.S. escalated a trade row with China by saying it was considering more than doubling threatened tariffs on a range of Chinese imports worth $200 billion. The U.S. has already imposed 25% tariffs on $34 billion in Chinese goods, with another $16 billion to be targeted in coming weeks. The RCEP has gained attention since the U.S. pulled out of the TPP, which was billed as the world's biggest trade pact when it was signed in February 2016, following years of negotiations. Under then U.S. President Barack Obama, it was sold to American allies as a unique opportunity to seize the initiative on worldwide trade and ensure China doesn't get to dictate global terms of commerce.
The United States and our 8 partners reached the broad outlines of an agreement on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And today I'm pleased that Japan, Canada, and Mexico have now expressed an interest in this effort. This comes on the heels of our landmark trade agreements with South Korea, Panama, and Colombia, which will support tens of thousands of American jobs.
Now, the 11 remaining TPP nations signed the slimmed-down version of the agreement in March. But Beijing is now keen to use Washington's rejection of that pact to build enthusiasm for its own deal and increase influence in the region. RCEP is a more modest deal that prescribes lower and more limited regulatory standards.
Singapore Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan said ASEAN needs to be innovative and adaptive to remain to cope in the midst of these 3 tectonic shifts, or 3 major tectonic shifts. Let's listen in.
Earlier on during the opening ceremony, we discussed the need for us to maintain our composure and our ability to cope in the midst of these three major tectonic shifts. First, the transition to a multipolar world. Second, how to cope with impending and in fact ongoing trade wars. And third, the impact of the digital revolution.
After exiting China 8 years ago due to censorship and hacking, Google is tuning a mobile search app that would filter blacklisted search results in order to re-enter the market, according to U.S. media reports. The California-based internet giant has engineers designing search software that would leave out content blacklisted by the Chinese government, according to a New York Times report citing two unnamed people familiar with the effort. News website The Intercept first, the news website that intercepted this first reported the story, saying the Chinese search app was being tailored for Google-backed Android operating system for mobile devices. The service was said to have been shown to Chinese officials. Google didn't respond to requests for comment. There was no guarantee the project would result in Google search returning to China. U.S. internet titans have long struggled with doing business in China, home of a great firewall that blocks content as seen fit by officials. The U.S. and China are currently involved in a trade war, with President Trump imposing tariffs and Beijing responding in kind.
Ride-hailing firm Grab said on Thursday it has raised $2 billion from investors to expand its offerings, including electronic payments, food delivery, and courier services, as it fights fierce competition in the fast-growing sector. Around half of the funds came from Japanese car giant Toyota, which announced last month it was pumping $1 billion into Grab, Southeast Asia's dominant rideshare company. Grab said a significant portion of the proceeds would go to developing operations in Indonesia, where it has partnered with a local firm Ovo to offer what it said was the country's most widely accepted mobile payment system. The announcement comes from Grab's regional rival, Indonesian ride-hailing app Gojek, said in May it was investing $500 million to expand into Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, and the Philippines. Singapore-based Grab, which operates in 8 countries, launched an on-demand grocery delivery service in Jakarta last month. Southeast Asia's ride-hailing market is expected to be worth $20 billion by 2025, according to research by Google and Singapore investment vehicle Temasek.
In other tech news, U.S. company Bird launches Paris' second self-service electric scooter company, competing with Uber-backed venture Lime, which was unveiled in the capital in June. Take a look.
C'est très drôle. Faites attention à vous.
Donc vous utilisez notre service, vous pouvez par exemple prendre le métro jusqu'à une station, trouver le bird le plus proche avec votre application, monter dessus et aller à votre destination de façon efficace. C'est un déplacement qui est également agréable et surtout, et de manière plus importante, complètement écologique.
Bravo. Toutes les villes denses ont besoin de transport et de moyens de mobilité alternatifs et nouveaux. On a le vélo qui est essentiel. Trottinette électrique, il faut découvrir ce que ça apporte. Il y a la question du scooter électrique qui à Paris pose plein de questions, mais cette question, toutes les villes du monde se les posent en même temps.
Vous m'en faites une fois?
We'll be back with more news right after this break.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila Bay Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical services, backed by several experienced physicians in Chinese medicine. At an accuracy rate of 98%, countless patients
creating your moments. Kindling your passion. Worth reliving over and over. This is your world, your life, your garden.
Planet-warming greenhouse gases surged to new heights as abnormally hot temperatures swept the globe and ice melted at record levels in the Arctic last year due to climate change, a major U.S. report said Wednesday. The annual State of the Climate Report, compiled by more than 450 scientists from over 60 countries, describes worsening climate conditions worldwide in 2017, the same year that U.S. President Donald Trump pulled out of the landmark Paris climate deal. The United States is the world's second leading polluter after China, but has rolled back environmental safeguards under Trump, who has declared climate change a Chinese hoax and exited the Paris deal signed by more than 190 nations as a path toward curbing harmful emissions. The 300-page report issued by the American Meteorological Society and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration mentioned the word abnormal a dozen times, referring to storms, droughts, scorching temperatures, and record low ice cover in the Arctic. Last year, the top three most dangerous greenhouse gases released into Earth's atmosphere, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, reached new records or record highs. The annual global average carbon dioxide concentration at the Earth's surface climbed to 405 parts per million, the highest in the modern atmospheric measurement record, and in ice core records dating back as far as 800,000 years, according to the report. The global growth rate of CO2 has nearly quadrupled since the early 1960s.
Meanwhile, thousands of firefighters in California are battling several large-scale blazes that have consumed an area the size of Los Angeles. Authorities are warning erratic winds and dry conditions have caused the flames to grow and spread. The Car Fire has scorched 89,194 acres, destroyed 517 buildings, and damaged 135 more, according to the latest reports. California Governor Jerry Brown has declared a state of emergency in the county, as well as in the counties of Lake, Napa, and Mendocino. Another Northern California fire, the Mendocino complex, made up of two fires, has also burned more than 24,000 acres in total since Friday. Elsewhere, firefighters reported that the Ferguson fire near Yosemite National Park had grown only by around 1,980 acres overnight, bringing the total damage to 53,646 acres since July 13. Meanwhile, the Cranston fire forced the evacuation of over 7,000 people, although some were able to return to their homes. The fire, sparked by humans, has destroyed 13,130 acres. According to the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, 17 large-scale fires were burning, with 12,000 firefighters deployed across the state.
Since the vegetation won't burn with the white salt on it.
Bamboo farming is now being eyed to hasten the rehabilitation of areas laid waste by mining operations, Trade and Industry Secretary Ramon Lopez told reporters. Lopez said a meeting between the government and stakeholders of the mining industry was held early this week, wherein the use of bamboos for the faster recovery of mined lands was recommended. A top trade official mentioned there are not enough areas that are planted with bamboo, as it is only being cultivated in about 10,000 hectares. Mined areas that need rehabilitation cover about 300,000 hectares, Lopez noted. Lopez said cultivating bamboos for mined lands rehabilitation could also be a source of livelihood for communities in mining areas. He also said Environment and Natural Resources Secretary Roy Cimatu is open to work out a sustainable mining development plan through planting bamboos for rehabilitation. President Duterte has ordered mining firms to implement reforestation or the government will revoke their permits. He also warned mining companies to avoid open pit mining. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
That's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles and
we're one with 25.